Hello everybody, this is Dr. Novak again. This review is about a denitrate made by Seachem. It's a, well, like it says, it's supposed to take nitrates out of the water. And it's not inexpensive. I think you buy it on the internet for 17 bucks. The one I bought is, this one was over $18 for a little container of it. And so I'm going to do a review on this of what I found out. I used it for 6 months. The directions and how it works is confusing, and I will get into that in this review, how it's a little confusing to the hobbyists. Another thing I'm going to get into this video is this cube fish tank, 24 by 24 by 24, made by Aquarium, and it's sold by Petco. It's something new. In fact, I just saw it today. But anyway, getting back to the Seachem, this is what it looks like. This is a close-up photo of it, and basically it looks like pumice. Okay, I mean, I'll be honest with you. It looks like pumice that's been broken up. It's looks like many of the other products that are out there that are used, you know, whether they're made by Eheim or something else. But this more or less looks like almost a pumice rock. I don't know what it is, they don't say, but it almost, that's what it looks like to me. I could be wrong, could be something special, but I'm just telling you what it looks like by the eye. But anyhow, getting into the conflicting part of this whole thing is that the nitrogen cycle. Now, if you watch my review on the nitrogen cycle as told by the wastewater management and being taught by our universities and college, this is what the nitrogen cycle is. And the denitrification happens in anoxic conditions. The EPA has set a standard here in the United States that no nitrates over 10 parts per million can be discharged from a wastewater treatment plant. Okay, that is the law. So we cannot have nitrates being pushed back into our system because it's harmful to humans and animals. Anyhow, on the Seachem here, the directions is denitrate removes nitrates, ammonia, and organics from both freshwater and marine water. The high porosity of denitrate supports the proliferation of both aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. Now we have a conflict there. It says aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria does assimilatory denitrification, turning nitrates back into ammonia. That's a little confusing, isn't it? Especially since the universities say in order to have denitrification, as I showed in my video, you have to have anoxic conditions. Confusing, isn't it? Let's see, the further remove those toxic aquarium byproducts. Even when exhausted and organic absorbent, denitrate continues to be an excellent support for biological filter and does not have to be removed. For best results, denitrate should be placed in the flow water through it, and the water rate at which the water should be flowing through it should be no more, as the label says, 50 gallons per hour. Now that's pretty slow, 50 gallons per hour. Yeah, 50 US gallons per hour. If higher flow rates are unavailable, use or unavoidable, use matrix or pond matrix. Anyhow, That's pretty slow, 50 gallons per US gallon. However, I'm going to read you what it says on their website, and then you read what's on the label. It's a little confusing on, well, what do I do? Do I do what the website says or do what the label says? It also says on the label, it is best to rinse off the dust before use. Once the nitrate has been in use for several days, nitrate concentration should start to fall and level off gradually at concentrations of 4 to 5 milligrams, which is the same as saying 4 to 5 parts per million as nitrate. As long as nitrate concentrations remain under control, the product is not exhausted. Let's see, each 250 milliliters of denitrate treats about 50 to 100 liters, 12 to 25 US gallons, depending on initial nitrate concentration and the current biological load. Well, there's their easy out, depending on the initial nitrate concentration and the current biological load. There's their outage. You know, where if you say, oh, it doesn't work, well, that depended on your, nitrate concentration and biological load. You see, there's your out. Okay, enough should be used to remove nitrate at a rate at least fast as the rate of formation. If very high nitrates are initially present, they should be brought down to less than 20 milligrams a liter with water changes. Okay, so what they're saying here is that basically that you need very slow water movement rate through this denitrate, and you may need a lot of it depending on what your nitrates are initially. So at $18 a pop, there's 2 of these containers would be $40. Let's say you needed 4 containers, there's $80 of nitrate remover that you would need. However, I would like to read you exactly what one of the reviews said that's on the internet. What it is and what it does. Seachem Nitrate is a substance which removes various substances like ammonia, nitrate from your aquarium through anaerobic denitrification. Well, we all know if it works by anaerobic denitrification, it's actually creating more ammonia. So if that's the case, it's assimilatory denitrification. Okay, that's a little different than the denitrification that we are looking for in our aquariums. Is the denitrification that happens in anoxic zones called dissimilative denitrification. Okay, so there's 2 different kinds of denitrification. Now, according to this review or an article that was written on it, if it says aquarium through anaerobic denitrification, then it's assimilatory denitrification, not the same denitrification that they use in our wastewater plants and what's being taught in universities and college in order to create N2. But let's get into this. In simplest terms, the Seachem denitrate tablets contain beneficial bacteria and other substances which break down ammonia and nitrates into harmless nitrogen, as well as a couple of other harmless byproducts. Now, when they talk about other harmless byproducts, whether they talk about nitric oxide or nitrous oxide, and then it will be broken down into N2. Is that the other byproducts? They don't say. They just say as well as a couple of other harmless byproducts. However, if you're doing anaerobic denitrification, you're creating ammonia. That is a very harmful byproduct. You see where this gets confusing to the hobbyists? The point here is that the Seachem denitrification is meant to take care of the substance which your biological filter has been unable to deal with. Okay, they admit that the nitrogen cycle is not being completed. It is a pretty complicated process with lots of science involved, so we are not going to get too deep into it here. However, what you need to know is that these Seachem denitrate tablets release bacteria into the water, which break down ammonia into nitrite, break down the same nitrite into nitrate, and then breaks down the nitrate into harmless nitrogen and a couple of other things. Well, what do you got here? You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't have, in this article, you can't have anaerobic denitrification, assimilatory denitrification, and create N2. As I explained to you in the lessons being taught in universities, that can only happen in anoxic conditions where facultative bacteria steal oxygen from nitrates and nitrites and phosphates to continue on, which means oxygen levels could be at 0.3, 0.2, 0.1 parts per million. Okay, and these bacteria will start stealing oxygen then from nitrates, which turns it into N2. If you read this article, it looks like it's part of Seachem. Maybe it isn't. Maybe they're being paid off by Seachem or affiliated with Seachem. It's really confusing, isn't it? Where if you break down ammonia and nitrate and nitrates, that it's saying the product does, but then it creates nitrates and it breaks down nitrates into harmful, harmless nitrogen. Well, it's not doing that, because you just said that it uses anaerobic denitrification. So it's not going to break down nitrates into harmless nitrogen gas, N2. It is going to break it down into ammonia. See, you can see where hobbyists are really getting their information, and then they get on the internet and they act like they know so much about microbiology, and you see how, they're talking. It's like, you got that wrong. Where are you getting this information? Well, here it is. Harmless nitrogen and a couple of other things. It is like a multi-step process that results in clean, clear, and substance-free water. Now, that was in a review, and I had to read you that of what it says. That is so confusing to the hobbyist. No wonder the hobbyist doesn't know which way's up, which way's down. You read something like that, and you say, well, they just got finished saying it's done with anaerobic bacteria. And then when I read you what they're teaching in our universities for wastewater management in order to get a degree, they're saying it happens only in anoxic conditions. It's like, what? Where are we going with this? Anyhow, I'm going to read you right from the Seachem website. You can go to their website, and this is written right there. It says, overview. Denitrate is an economical, natural, porous material with a pore distribution and geometry that promotes both aerobic nitrification within the first few millimeters of depth and anaerobic denitrification at the core. Okay, they say it right there. So if they're saying it has anaerobic denitrification, they're saying it does assimilatory denitrification, which creates more ammonia. They just said it right on the site. If it does anaerobic denitrification, it's making ammonia. If it does anoxic denitrification, dissimilative denitrification, it's creating N2. But they say on their website it's anaerobic, so I guess it's just making more ammonia. That's what assimilatory denitrification does. At least that's what's being taught in our universities and college. Although the denitrate has a capacity to trap nitrate, this is with other nitrate-retaining materials, such as certain zeolites and synthetic resins, is quite limited, and the primary mechanism of nitrate removal is anaerobic. See, you can see where people are just fighting with each other on forums, on YouTube, because of the wording of how people are wording things. It's not the same wording as they're using in universities and colleges. They're wording it in such a way it makes the hobbyist very, very confused. Live rock or reef rocks remove nitrate by anaerobic denitrification. No, live rock and reef rocks remove and do denitrification through anoxic conditions, the same as what is used in wastewater management. The same principle as what used in wastewater management. Because if it were to do anaerobic denitrification, then it would create more ammonia going back into the reef system. Denitrate removes nitrate by the same process. Well, okay, they're saying in one way it's anaerobic, but it's not. It's anoxic. Let's see. Efficiency is magnified several folds by forcing the water to filter through the porous denitrate. As with reef rock, anaerobic conditions are achieved by the porosity and the depletion of oxygen by aerobic processes at the surface. Okay, we found out that this is not right. This is not what's being taught in our universities. The depletion of oxygen comes when in an anoxic condition, facultative bacteria steal the oxygen from nitrates and phosphates. This is how you end up with N2. It does not happen in anaerobic conditions where it's devoid of oxygen, because if you remember the lesson said, you would think if you're void of oxygen, there's no oxygen, but they also stated in the college lesson that, well, that is not necessarily true because you could still have oxygen in the form of nitrites, nitrates, and phosphates. So you still have some form of oxygen, and these little bugs are very, very resourceful, facultative bacteria. They will then steal that oxygen. Okay, at the surface, excess flow rates should therefore be avoided, as they may impede development of adequate anaerobic environment to support denitrifying bacteria. Denitrate is also excellent medium for aerobic nitrification, and it makes an ideal biological filter in a drip trays, canister filters, sumps. In other words, if the flow rate is too high, it just acts like any other biological filter material that they make out there. It acts the same as sponges, rocks, any other porous material that you want to mention. At high flow rates, greater than 100 US gallons per hour. Now, oh, wait a second. Didn't you just say on the bottle that it can't be more than 50 US gallons per hour? At greater than 100 US gallons per hour, it will function solely as anaerobic. At slow flow rates, less than 50 gallons per hour, it will function as both aerobic filter and anaerobic denitrifying filter. Okay, so what happens between 50 to 51 gallons per hour to 99 US gallons per hour? What happens in that state if the flow rate goes to 51 to 99 gallons per hour? What happens with the material? It's kind of confusing. So in one way, it's 51 gallons per hour. It would act as an aerobic filter only. Anything lower than 50 US gallons per hour, it acts as an anaerobic remover of nitrates. This could explain, not only does this get confusing, but this could explain why when you read on the internet, let's say Amazon, you get people saying that It does not work. Didn't work for me. I give it 1 star. And other people say it worked. Maybe because the flow rate is a lot slower going through it. It's as slow as 50 or less gallons per hour going through this denitrate that Seachem has made. So you see, this is a complicated material to use, because where are you going to find a filter unless you have an adjustment valve of some sort to turn it down to 50 or less gallons per hour, which means you're not going to turn your tank over very much. And you would have to buy several bags of this at a very high price to put, let's say, I'm using this example, canister filter, and like I did, I put it in a canister filter, and you'll have to turn down your canister filter to almost a trickle, like a little bitty pump would put out, 50 gallons an hour. You know, one of those little waterfall pumps that are real tiny. That's barely any water coming out per hour. The problem is, here's the problem that you run into, that I ran into when I used the product. If that flow rate is so slow, 50 gallons an hour or less, if it's not watched very carefully, okay, you can come up with hydrogen sulfide. The smell, and then it will go, the complete canister filter will then go anaerobic because you're running it so slow, and then you will smell that hydrogen sulfide smell, and which we have learned from my last lesson on wastewater management. When you know all the oxygen has been depleted out of something, you will smell that hydrogen sulfide smell. Remember that? They said when all the oxygen gets depleted, even from that of nitrates, phosphates, when all that oxygen is gone, you start smelling hydrogen sulfide because another bacteria takes over to do assimilatory denitrification. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I'm running this thing real slow. I got these packs in there, and as it begins to clog up, the water starts running even slower still. So you're constantly going to have to get your canister or whatever and constantly be checking it to make sure the flow rate stays at about 40 to 50 gallons per hour going through the material. Now this does not take into accountability the clogging of the material. If anything goes through the material and starts clogging it up, unless you have some sort of sponges, very fine filtering material before this denitrate to take out very fine particulate matter so it doesn't clog up on the denitrate. So it's a little harder to use than what it sounds like. And therefore, that's probably why you're getting people who said, it did not work for me, and other people claim, well, it worked for me. But nobody that I see on Amazon, for example, says that, oh, I ran it at the recommended 50 gallon per hour and it worked just fine for me. Did they put it in a sump, in a bag, and the water went over it? Well, if you do not have, if you have your matrix in a bag, let's say, and you put it in a sump, the water is going to have water shear and run over the bag. Trying to run through it, it's going to be next to impossible. You got to have some way to make sure the water does run through the product. And that gets a little more complicated. If you make a slow-moving plenum, you're guaranteed that water is going to be displaced through the substrate on a 24/7 basis, 365 days a year. If you use a BCB, you know ions are being attracted into the BCB, which causes diffusion of ions. We know that. So when you put something in a bag, and I'm sure we've all done that, let's say like carbon, and you put the carbon in the center of your canister filter, let's say. All the water does is go around that bag because water takes the path of least resistance. And therefore, you have the problem of if you put this stuff in a bag and you put it in a sump, or if you put it in a canister and water just flows around it, water is just going to take the path of least resistance. Very little water is going to be moving through the bag itself. And this then can cause, if not done correctly, yes, the anaerobic conditions of which they said. But then that will create more ammonia. Anyhow, I tested out the product. I found it was very difficult to use, very difficult to get to set up, and it did not work for me. Does that mean it doesn't work? No, it didn't work for me. And I tried it out and gave it a good old college try for 6 months, and it was, for me, it was just another biological media that's out there that really has to be watched, like a denitrate filter like Sarah made. They made a denitrate filter where you had to connect it to their Sarah Titan canister filter, and then you would adjust the flow rate going through this denitrate filter, and it would be real slow, but then you gave it something that would have glucose in it, a tablet or something, and it was a big hassle. It didn't go over, it was too hard. That's the same with this stuff. It's just too hard. I found it to be just too complicated, too hard to work correctly, and finally you just throw the towel in and say, no, it's just too hard. It just acts like any other filter media. It really needs to be controlled correctly. Okay, so that is my outcome of this, that it didn't work for me. It needs to be controlled very, very tightly. You need to watch your flow rate very closely so it doesn't start making hydrogen sulfide and pumping hydrogen sulfide into your aquarium. It just, for me, was a big hassle. I'm sorry. For me, it was a big hassle trying to regulate it and try to keep it going correctly, so it did not work. Okay, now we're going to get into the Petco Aquarium. I saw this aquarium today, and I really thought it was neat. It looked like it was well made. It comes with a lid. It also comes with, it was $2.99. I think the stand is $1.50. It's not it's just a stand. I think it's particle board, with that plastic, black plastic that looks like wood. Not a very expensive stand. It was $150 for the stand, $2.99 for the aquarium plus lid. Don't forget, Petco has that half price sale during Christmas time, right after Black Friday. You can pick one of these up for half price. I thought it was pretty neat. And if you think about it, 24 by 24 by 24 aquarium, you'd say, well, 24, that's kind of deep. Yeah, but if you put a plenum in it and eat up 4 inches or 5 inches of that bottom, now you're only talking 20 to 19 inches of aquarium depth to reach your hand into. It's not so bad. Okay. Depending on how high the stand is too. But anyway, I thought it was pretty nice. I know that Aquarium is going to make another aquarium, I don't know when it's coming out, a 60-gallon breeder. It's going to be the same size as a breeder except 1 foot longer. So it's going to be like a 75 but lower. That I have not seen. But I did see this, and I think if you're interested in buying a 60-gallon aquarium and you like the cube look, this would make an excellent planted aquarium, excellent for goldfish, excellent for angelfish, to put in there, plants, non-plants. It's kind of small, I would say, maybe if you're going to have big fish like Oscars or a Texas cichlid or something like that. I would say, yeah, maybe it's a little small for that. It would be good for even saltwater. It does not come with an overflow. So definitely this is one of those aquariums that you have to add a canister or hang on the back filter. Perfect for freshwater, I would say. So anyhow, that's my review on both products. The product did look different. I didn't get into the product itself, but it does have clips to put the lid on. The price didn't seem bad. I kind of went on the internet. A 24 by 24 by 24 tank will run you over $300. So it's right in the same price range as other aquariums. Oh, and they do give you a mat to set the aquarium on, a rubber mat also. That comes with the aquarium. And then, of course, you buy this stand separately if you need it. Anyhow, that's it for this review. I wish it could have been better because I like Seachem products, but I just found it a little too complicated to use to get it to work absolutely correctly, and therefore I can't recommend it because I think it'd be too much of a hassle for people, and hobbies is going to become, they're going to become disinterested in it, or they'll just use it as a medium for aerobic only conditions, and it's not going to do the nitrogen cycle in its fullest, and you're going to be disenchanted with this very expensive product. That's how I felt. Okay, that's just me. Anyhow, until next time, this is Dr. Novak. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy fish keeping.